Hello, and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, and I'm so glad that you guys came back for another week to join us on this week's episode. And this week, I wanted to kind of build on last week's topic, which was all about building your self-respect and thus building your self-confidence. But in order to do that, one of the key points that we landed on in all the tips about building our self-respect, right, was learning how to let go of perfectionism and just let go of self-judgment in order to not necessarily eradicate your weaknesses, but, build your weaknesses into strengths, or just learn to live with those weaknesses and those imperfections. Now, before we do that, how do we get rid of that negative self-talk and that perfectionist voice that lives in all of our heads? And, that voice that tells you, oh, you're not doing good enough. Oh, you're not doing this enough. What is negative self-talk? Let's first break that down. So I searched it up and I found that negative self-talk can actually take several different forms, and it can sound really grounded, which is like, I'm not very good at this, so I shouldn't, try this. I'm not very good at socializing on my own, so I shouldn't push myself out of my comfort zone and, go start taking classes, like, bachata classes or something. Like, I shouldn't do that. That's not something I can do. Or it can sound pretty like mean, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I am unable to fucking do this one thing. I'm stupid. I'm so stupid. I can't do this one thing. Like, what's wrong with me? You're stupid. Like, that's what that voice is telling you. But it can also sound kind of, hopeless, which is, I don't deserve to be able to go to these classes. I don't deserve to be able to, I don't deserve to be in love. I don't deserve to be happy, feeling that kind of like hopelessness and despair within yourself. But it can also kind of sound apathetic, which is, I'll fail, so what's the point in trying? Like, I've never been good at dancing, so, what's the point of me trying to take a class? There's no point in that. Let me just not even do that. Let me not waste my time, because I'm obviously bad at that. I'm terrible at that. And this form, to me, seems like the lesser evil, but only because of that kind of neutrality that it kind of invites, which is like, but it's kind of it's a dark neutrality, if you will. So it's still dangerous. But the last one is also kind of defeated, even if I try my hardest to try this one dance class, I'm not going to be able to do it, because at my core, I'm bad at dancing. At my core, I'm a bad person. At my core, I am a non-active person. So it's, even if I try my hardest, I'm not even going to be able to do it. So why even bother anyway? And a lot of these phrases that I just pointed out kind of lead into characteristics of states of mind that we've heard of before, which includes like anxiety and depression. And that is how negative self-talk can affect us, not only in disallowing us to build our self-respect, disallowing us to build our confidence, but it affects us negatively in a lot of ways. And it builds onto our anxiety, builds onto our social anxiety, builds onto our depressive, attitudes. Negative self-talk is often the culprit in that. And so how do we, stop ourselves from leaning into that that negative self-talk that then limits us of our realized capacity for success, our self-realized, capacity for happiness? We're thinking to ourselves, oh, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve that. Then we're limiting ourselves and we're limiting our opportunities for the simple reason of thinking, oh, I'm not going to be able to do it anyway because I suck. That's what your brain is telling you. And, it makes us unhappy every step that we take, every chance that we take, every action we do, every leap we try to take, it's going to follow you unless you try to make an active effort to neutralize that negative self-talk. But now let's just say that self-criticism and self-judgment is a universal experience. You can be the prettiest, richest person in the world, and you are still going to compare yourself to your neighbor, compare yourself to your friends, compare yourself to people you see online. It's something that everybody goes through, but I think some of us fall more prey to that self-criticism, to that self-judgment than others. But how do we get past the understanding that we might not excel at every aspect of our lives, but not excelling doesn't mean that we're failing? How do we reframe our mindset into trying to let go of that perfectionist mindset that makes us think, any place in which I fall short, that's just another vote into showing that I'm a bad person. Every goal that I try to hit and fail, that is me just proving to myself that I suck. Every mistake that I make, every time I react badly to someone, that's just another vote for me being, a terrible reactor, terrible person, whatever. How do we let go of that self-criticism and that self-judgment? And, this isn't something that I have never spoken about before. I did talk about, that kind of detachment from outcomes when it comes to setting those goals. And, if you try to make a plan and it doesn't go accordingly, I did make an episode about that, episode 47 in season 1. And I did kind of talk about how to deal with jealousy and envy in episode 49 back in season 1 as well, if you guys want to check that one out. And I even kind of delved into the releasing of judgment of others, which was episode 56. But I have yet to really delve into battling that self-criticism, that self-judgment. And so that's what we're going to delve into today. Let's talk about how we can release judgment of ourselves and learn how to live with our weaknesses and maybe even turn them into strengths. Now, I have 7 actionable tools for you that we can try to work through. And I actually also have a little Reddit anecdote, like I mentioned at the start of the season, that I wanted to start implementing those. I found one that really went together with today's topic, so stay tuned until the end for that. But the first thing that I have noted down is to practice self-awareness and self-acceptance. And that's acknowledging your weaknesses, your self-critical thoughts, as a neutral territory. When I was at my lowest, in negative self-talk, in that self-criticizing, that constant comparing of my friends, thinking, oh my gosh, they have so many more friends than I do. How am I going to, how am I meant to believe that I'm worth being someone's friend? Why do I not have as many friends as them? This is what I was talking to myself. I was telling myself, how can I not have any friends? How can this be the case? There must be something about me that is terrible. And that loop would just continue and continue and continue. And then I ended up sobbing in my room, and it's okay, nothing has actually happened. Nobody's come to you and said, you suck and you're a terrible friend and nobody wants to be your friend. Nobody said that. This is just me building on that comparison, building on that judgment, comparing myself with others around me, and further, putting myself down by judging, my thoughts. I was telling myself, oh my God, I hated how much of a victim I was becoming in my own head. And I was just becoming sick of my own narrative. And then I realized, what if I just kind of treat my emotions and treat those thoughts like they're just, it's a tennis match in my mind. Sometimes I get some good thoughts, sometimes I get some bad thoughts, and all they are thoughts. They're neutral territory. When you think about the brain and you think about how many thoughts go through your mind in a day, there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of thoughts, I'm sure, that are happening in your brain, and you do not take action to every single one of them, which means that, your thoughts don't define you, your actions do. So what I started to try to do is kind of just listen to my mind. I'm not listening to my mind and then immediately assigning my identity with that thought pattern. I'm thinking to myself, okay, it seems like my brain is doing some sort of weird spiral, and self-pity pit is one that I cannot get out of. I'm just in the self-pity pit. I cannot get out. It's doing a spiral. I'm spiraling. That's what it is. And honestly, sometimes it can help to kind of just name what's going on in your mind. I am spiraling. And that's an action. It's what I'm doing. I'm spiraling. Okay, I'm not going to spiral forever. So I'm spiraling, I guess. I guess let's just distract my brain. Let's just distract it. Let's put on a good video. Let's put on a funny video. Let's put on something. Let's just drink some water, take a nap, take a shower. This is just something that's going on in my brain, but my body right here, I'm just sitting here. I'm just sitting here. Might as well go take a nap, set my mind to sleep, go take a shower, distract myself, whatever. But the key here is that I'm not nitpicking every thought that pops up into my head. I'm not furthering that self-pity, cycle that is so easy to fall into. I'm just observing my thoughts. I'm telling myself, okay, my thoughts are really giving self-pity. It's really giving victimhood. It's giving depression, honestly. But, that's just what's going on up there. That's what's going on up there. I guess I live in this mind, but I live in the physical world too. Let's just do something. Let's just do something else around here. And then just kind of note it down, okay, what is the most recurring pattern, and is there something I can do about it? Acknowledge that your weaknesses are part of you being human. And it's just a mindful reflection, essentially. And it's non-judgmental. Now, the second thing that I have for you is to try to reframe your negative thought patterns. Reframe those negative thoughts and think to yourself, okay, like I said earlier, is this something that I can work on? What is the thing that keeps popping up again and again and again and again? Is it that I feel like I am not sleeping enough and I feel exhausted constantly, and I just the world feels draining because I'm just so exhausted constantly? I'm tired. I feel so tired. And maybe that's a bad example, but in my experience, there is an actionable step against that. Try to prioritize getting more sleep, and that will ensure that I am more likely to enjoy my day to day. When I was repeatedly not prioritizing my sleep, especially after COVID, I was going to bed at 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. when school started, which is crazy still. I was going to bed at 6 a.m., waking up at 8 a.m. for my 8 a.m. class, which was on Zoom, doing that class for 3.5 hours at 11:30. I would also sometimes sleep through that class, which was also ridiculous, but my computer, it was a design class. My computer was broken, so I literally could not do anything. But that is besides the point. I would sleep after that 11:30, whatever, sleep for 2 hours, then go through the rest of the day, and the whole cycle continues. I was getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a day? That does not make any sense. And obviously I was going through the day, I was exhausted. I've been my body kind of feels ill. When you're exhausted, you're just my body's breaking down. Reframe those negative thoughts and thinking, oh my God, my body is exhausted. My head hurts. The sun feels it's too much. I just feel exhausted. I just want to sleep constantly. What is driving those thoughts? What pattern, what action are you taking that might be furthering that? That's one of the steps that can help you turn those weaknesses into strengths. Instead of thinking to yourself and wallowing in that feeling, in that emotion, try to think more pragmatically. Why am I feeling this way? What is causing me to feel this way? Can I do anything about that? And the more that you kind of try to lean into those solutions, those actionable steps, those solutions, you'll be able to kind of lean on yourself a little bit more. And that's also going to lend to building that self-respect and that confidence. But you can't do that without first accepting the way that your brain works, accepting the habits that you have, these bad habits or bad traits, character traits, whatever that you are able to observe. And then after you observe them, you can start to think. And honestly, I did an episode a while back saying adults are basically adults and psychedelics are basically children, or something like that. I'll find the title. I cannot remember for some reason. But think about yourself as a child, and your child is having a tantrum, and your child is tired, and it's oh my God, she did not sleep last night, she did not sleep. This is why she's acting this way. She's acting this way because she didn't sleep. And you can be both the child and the adult in your mind. You can play both parts. At least personally, that's what I found. When you are able to kind of detach from that emotional, playing field, from that feeling of that anger, that disappointment, that fear, if you're able to separate yourself from it just for a moment and think, okay, what is causing that? Think about yourself as a babysitter. You're okay, why are you acting like this? Why are you crying? Are you okay? What's wrong? Let's think about it. Let's really think about it. Instead of wallowing and sitting inside that feeling and letting your identity be inseparable from it. Inseparable. But also, mistakes are not necessarily failures. Mistakes can be opportunity for growth. And it's all about flipping that narrative. Instead of thinking about those thoughts and falling further into the criticism, think about it as constructive criticism. These are new paths open up to you. All of these weaknesses are things that you can now, grow and develop upon, and that can lead you to develop other areas of your life as well. Now, the third point that I have on the list is to develop self-compassion. And this is definitely a hard step to come to, which is why I really implore that you kind of focus on that neutral territory when it comes to your brain and when it comes to your thoughts. Because you are not your thoughts. Again, you are not your thoughts, you are only your actions. That's what defines you. So think about your thoughts as, that playing match in your brain. You're playing, you're flipping between the child and the babysitter, you're flipping. And being able to lean more and more into that kind of like parental role, even with yourself, with your own mind, it becomes easier to build that kind of self-compassion. Because also think about if your friend is calling you and your friend is calling you and is saying, oh my God, I failed this test. I suck. I'm so bad at taking tests. Like, I'm so bad at it. I'm stupid. Like, I'm actually stupid. I think I'm stupid because I'm unable to take these tests. Even the classwork is hard. Everything is hard. Everything feels too much and it is just too overwhelming and I feel dumb. I'm stupid. If your friend comes to you and tells you that, are you going to come to them and be like, yeah, honestly, you are. Like, honestly, yeah, like the stats aren't lying. You're actually not doing too well. Yeah, you should actually like sit in a pool of your own tears and just like continue to cry and just, continue to do that. Like, you're not going to say that. So why is it that we do that to ourselves so easily? Our mind can be our worst enemy. It's so important to be able to build that self-compassion that you would have towards that friend. You would say, no, listen, if you go to these office hours, you go to this extra study group or whatever, you watch these videos on YouTube, you might start from the beginning again, go back to the beginnings. If it's Orgo, go back to Stoic, go back to the basics and build from there. Tell your professor, listen, I am really struggling. I do not understand. Please explain it to me. I'm sure that they'll do it. This is what you would say to that friend. So why don't we say this to ourselves? We need to remind ourselves to foster this self-compassionate, attitude towards our thoughts and towards our mistakes, towards our weaknesses. We need to have first awareness and just acceptance, but we need to have that self-compassion. And that is going to halt, that negative self-talk. You're not going to be pushing further down, punching your friend while they're down. You don't want to punch yourself while you're down with that negative self-talk. You want to build yourself back up. Try to have that compassion with yourself. And not only is having that self-compassion going to help you kind of respect yourself, but it's going to help you build that confidence and that respect just for the simple fact of you not being almost like distrustful of yourself. If you are unhappy with the way that your thoughts lead and that you are often finding yourself, punching yourself while you're down, thinking, I suck, like we read earlier, I can't do anything right. I don't deserve to be happy. I might as well not try because I suck anyway. You're not even going to like yourself. You're going to be like, my mind is not a happy place for me to be. You want your brain to be that happy place for you to be. You want to be able to find that compassion within yourself. And that's inevitably also going to help you build on that confidence that we talked about last week. Now, the fifth thing I have on the list is something that we also talked about last week, but it's to surround yourself with people who kind of foster that positivity and that support. Like we had in the last example with a friend, you want people who are going to be there for you and give you those actionable steps, tell you, listen, don't beat yourself up right now. You need to do this, lean towards this instead. Don't, lean into those friends who are like, I am, we're so stupid, I don't get it either. We suck, like we're dumb. Like, it's okay though that we're dumb because that's just the way we are. We're just dumb, like that's not necessarily going to help you build, this alternate thought pathway for yourself. While that friend might still be a good friend to you and might still be company in which that you still, enjoy, you still enjoy their company. They're not going to help you kind of foster this rerouting of the negative self-talk towards that positive self-talk. And so you want to be able to surround yourself with people who are not fueling your bad habits, not fueling your bad behavior, and are instead trying to inspire you, uplift you, and try to help you reroute those thoughts as well, on the outer world as well as the inner world. Because the more that you hear positivity, the more that you hear uplifting comments, the more that you feel supported, the more that you sense that support, you're inevitably kind of going to internalize that, because it's, even if you don't want to hear it, your subconscious does. And that's why you hear a lot of people doing like mantras, gratitude mantras. Even if you don't, even if you're reading and you're telling yourself, this is kind of dumb, like I don't think this is going to work, whatever. The more that you repeat it, your subconscious actually is listening. Your subconscious does listen. So having that positivity around you, having that positivity in those around you, it's inevitably going to at least trigger your inner world to start doing the same. Now, the sixth I have on the list is to focus on your strengths, and that will kind of inevitably help to counteract the weaknesses. Now, I think this is interesting because it's not necessarily that we're ignoring our weaknesses, right? But it all comes back to having that self-respect and that self-confidence. And, confidence is the antithesis of, negative self-talk. You need positive self-talk. You need that kind of like confidence in yourself, to feel happy within yourself. And that can't happen with negative self-talk. And sometimes in order to get there, if you're not able to, immediately change your nose or whatever, if that's an insecurity, I don't know, I feel like that's common insecurity, so people that popped up, but if you don't like your nose, that's not something that you're just gonna change, so I don't think you should, but sometimes it helps to lean into your other strengths. Tell yourself, okay, if I don't like my nose, that's fine, but what do I like about myself? What do I really enjoy about myself? Can I make myself feel even better about that one trait? Can I make myself feel even stronger in that one trait? Do I like the way that I handle this type of conversation rather than the way I handle that type of conversation? Maybe I can really think and pick apart, like, why do I handle this kind of situation better? What allows me to really like get my conversational goal, met? And that's a term I got from the Mel Robbins podcast, by the way, which I have started recently listening to. Love it. I can find the title. Communicate with Confidence, the blueprint for mastering every conversation. That was a fantastic, fantastic episode. My friend's mom told me to listen to this podcast, and I'm so happy I did. But like, why am I stronger in this one conversational sense than I am in the other? Like, what is really allowing me to, reach that, and building on those strengths, it's number one, going to kind of deter your focus from the weaknesses, because weaknesses are always worse. The more you focus on it, the more you think about it, the more you beat yourself up, then you just fall deeper and deeper, and you make the issue so much bigger in your head. Like, no, let's just focus on our strengths. Let's build upon our strengths. And then you'll also feel more resilient to then come back and attack that separate, different conversation that you are, tougher with. Maybe you're great at having conversations that have to do with, intellectual things, or maybe you love talking about music, or you love talking about your hobbies, and maybe you enjoy teaching people about a certain thing. Like, you enjoy teaching people about painting, enjoy teaching people about a specific political conflict, but maybe confrontation isn't your strong suit. Maybe, I think that's the only one popping into my head. I think that's usually a tough conversation to have. Confrontation is really difficult. But, what are these tools that maybe helped you in that sense and might help you in this sense? We never know. So it's good to focus on your strengths, not only because it deters you from those weaknesses, but it also gives you better tools to then come back, and better resilience to then attack those weaknesses. Now, the seventh is also just to practice positive mantras. And before I get into that, I think I'm going to read that Reddit story now, because it kind of ends with some of those mantras that I think could be good for people listening that might also be struggling with, too much of that negative self-talk that's holding you back from building that self-confidence, that self-love, that positive space, that sanctuary within your mind. Let's read this story. Currently going through the issue of chronic negative self-talk that has been a part of me for as long as I remember. I personally feel the instinctual, negative thoughts that pop up in my head largely affect every aspect of my life, emotionally, spiritually, socially, hell, even physically. This negative self-talk is not doing you any good. And really recognizing that can help start your journey to becoming a better you. It definitely helps to take a good hard look at yourself and to honestly evaluate where you are in life and whether you're currently happy with what you see. After a while, I was sick of pretending that this way of thinking wasn't affecting me. It was. I've been depressed all of my life, and newsflash, the negative self-talk was the main culprit. It made me hate myself and everything I did, but I won't get too into that right now. Point is, you need to put in the work if you want to get rid of this negative self-talk. It starts with self-compassion. First of all, yes, you should be proud of your work. That's exactly what you need to do more of, taking a step back and acknowledging your accomplishments. You're a kick-ass person and you just need to tell yourself that more often. I used to think telling yourself words of affirmation in the mirror was real dumb and unhelpful to the situation. But really, I was just afraid to admit I had an issue of self-hate. So start with that. Here's a list of phrases that I tell myself when I find a moment to myself. I accept the best and worst aspects of who I am. Changing is never simple, but it's easier if I stop being hard on myself. My mistakes just show that I'm growing and learning. It's okay to make mistakes and forgive myself. I am free to let go of others' judgments. It's safer for me to show kindness to myself. It's safe for me to show kindness to myself. I deserve compassion, tenderness, and empathy from myself. I release myself with forgiveness from today and move forward with self-love to tomorrow. Every day is a new opportunity. I won't let self-doubt or judgment hold me back from the future. I forgive myself and accept my flaws because nobody is perfect. I'm not the first person to have felt this way, and I won't be the last, but I'm growing. Be okay with not getting everything done perfectly or the way you'd prefer it to be. Life doesn't necessarily work that way, and that is perfectly fine. You need to be your own biggest fan so that someday you can get to that point where you are satisfied with the things you've done and you can be proud of yourself. Wish I could provide more insight, but I'm still working on this problem myself. I thought that was a beautiful little Reddit story, and I think it's really important to listen to this perspective because, this is a person who says that they have been depressed all of their life and who was in this negative self-talk spiral, but is working to try to get out of that. And one of those steps was those, self-affirmations. And even in my Gratitude, the Magic book that I read last month, one of the days was looking in the mirror and telling yourself in the mirror 3 things that you're grateful for. And, that happened to fall on my birthday, actually, when I hit that page. And I thought that was really funny. But, it really preached looking in the mirror and telling yourself 3 things that you can appreciate about yourself, that you're thankful for yourself. You can say, I'm grateful I brushed my teeth this morning. I am grateful that I worked out this morning. I am grateful that I made myself a breakfast that I enjoy. These are they can be simple things, big or small, but they are still actionable steps for you to kind of reroute that pattern, that negative self-talk pattern. And I really do think positive affirmations are a huge way to go. And I really am glad for this Reddit story. I don't want to necessarily reveal the title. It is pretty undercover already. It's Snooposaurus for Us is the title of their handle. But, just remember, I guess I'll leave it on this again because I've already mentioned it, but your thoughts don't define you. Your actions do. So honestly, lead with that. And even if you make a bad action, you can always take a new step, let that mistake be your redirection. And failure is not as bad as it can be, even if, failure is redirection. So we just need to remember that, remain neutral with our thoughts, and just remember to be kind to ourselves at the end of the day. And I think all of that will lead to better self-confidence and self-respect. So we're tying the knot on last week's episode as well. If you didn't listen to that one, I definitely recommend. I really enjoyed recording that one. I felt like the words were getting pulled from me. I wasn't even thinking, it was a good episode. I really enjoyed that one. But thank you so much for coming and tuning in this week. Sorry, this video episode is a bit dark. I'm recording after work as opposed to pre-work, so it's a bit darker in the day, but I am so thankful that you guys came and joined us for this week. And remember that the handles are at Kalopsiapod on Instagram and TikTok, and at Sydney Jotita, SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram and TikTok as well, if you guys want to follow my personals. But thank you so much for listening. Again, the videos are on YouTube if you guys want to watch them next time. That's always an option. And new episodes every Friday, and I will see you next Friday.